Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're doing a deep dive today on a book you've probably heard of, Atomic Habits by James Clear.
It's such a popular book, and for good reason.
Now, we're not trying to replace reading the book itself. Think of this deep dive as us giving you the absolute key takeaways.
It's gold.
So you can start using them right away, like today.
Exactly.
Imagine you're trying to build a new habit. Maybe it's finally exercising regularly or beating procrastination.
Right.
Atomic Habits is like your guide for that.
Right.
And we're going to break down exactly how.
What's really cool about this book is how Clear's approach is based on his own experience. And it's a pretty intense one.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't always a best-selling author.
Right.
So, okay. Picture this.
Yeah.
You're a star high school baseball player.
Okay.
Got a bright future ahead of you. And then, bam, you get this horrible injury during practice.
Right.
We're talking broken bones, seizures. There was even a time when Clear couldn't breathe on his own. What a setback, right?
Absolutely life-changing.
For sure.
And that's where things get interesting. It was a long road to recovery, but this experience was a turning point for him. He had to rebuild his life physically and mentally, piece by piece. And that's when he really discovered the power of small changes. That tiny improvements done consistently can lead to huge results.
And that's what makes Atomic Habits so relatable. You know, we've all had setbacks, maybe not as dramatic as Clear's, but we know what it's like to struggle.
For sure.
And this book teaches us to use those moments, those challenges, to build systems that set us up for success.
Instead of wishing for a different outcome,
Exactly.
you create a system that makes that outcome almost inevitable.
And Clear's living proof. He went from barely being able to function to having this amazing career as a writer and entrepreneur, all by using these principles. It really makes you wonder, what could you accomplish with the right systems in place?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to explore today.
Yeah, let's dive in. One of the core ideas in the book is the power of systems over goals. So think about it. Goals are focused on a specific outcome in the future. But then what? You hit that goal, now what?
It's like when people say, I want to lose 10 pounds, but they don't change their eating habits or exercise routine.
Right.
Yeah, you might hit that goal, but without a sustainable system, you'll probably just end up back where you started.
Yeah, it's a temporary fix.
Not a long-term solution.
Right.
So how do we fix that?
Clear emphasizes shifting the focus from the goal itself to the system that will get you there. The system is like the set of daily actions, the habits you build that make achieving the goal almost automatic.
So it becomes less about willpower and more about creating the right environment for success.
Exactly.
And I think it's helpful to connect that back to us, back to our lives. Think about your own goals. Where could you use this idea of building a system?
That's such a good point.
Clear uses the example of British cycling.
Oh, yeah.
They were pretty average for years until they decided to make 1% improvements in every area.
Everything.
From the bikes themselves to the athletes' sleep schedules.
Even the type of pillows they used.
Sounds crazy, right?
It does.
But guess what? It worked. Combining those tiny changes made them a dominant force in cycling. So it's a good reminder. Small changes done consistently create big results. That's what Atomic Habits is all about.
Now, another fascinating idea is identity-based habits. It's not just about doing, it's about being.
I love that.
Right.
So it's not about losing weight.
Yeah.
It's about becoming a healthy person. It's not about writing a book. It's about becoming a writer.
Yes.
It's that shift in identity that makes habits last.
Exactly. Your actions should match the identity you want. Clear talks about Brian Clark, an entrepreneur who bit his nails. He finally broke that habit by deciding to be a guy with manicured hands.
So interesting.
Right.
So instead of, I'm trying to stop biting my nails, it became, I'm the kind of person who takes care of their hands. And that shift changed his behavior.
Yeah.
What identity would make your desired habit automatic?
What a powerful question.
So we've talked about systems and identity. But how do we actually make this happen in real life?
That's where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come in.
I love these.
They're not just ideas. He gives real examples and tips.
Let's start with Law 1. Make it obvious. It's about making your habits, especially the new ones, clear and impossible to ignore.
Right. One of the best ways to do this is by using implementation intentions. So instead of, I'll exercise.
Right.
You get very specific, like, I'll run for 30 minutes at 7 a.m. in the park.
No more guesswork.
Yeah, it's a plan.
And I used to procrastinate so much. Then I found the 2-minute rule. It's been a game changer.
The 2-minute rule is great. So instead of trying to write a whole chapter, you commit to just one sentence. Instead of a full workout, you just put on your running shoes. Make the first step super easy, and you overcome that initial resistance.
It's like that saying, well begun is half done. Getting started is often the hardest part.
Exactly. And once you take that first step, it's so much easier to keep going.
And another part of making it obvious is your environment.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Clear talks about how researchers rearranged a cafeteria to make water more visible. And people chose water over soda just because it was easier.
Wow.
Just rearranging your surroundings can really change your choices.
It's crazy, right?
Like putting a bowl of fruit on the counter instead of in the fridge. You're more likely to eat it if it's right there. We think we make conscious decisions all the time, but our environment is often nudging us in certain directions.
That's so true.
It's amazing how powerful those little changes can be. And that's the whole point of Atomic Habits, making small changes that have a big impact on our lives.
I love that. Okay, so we've made it obvious, but how do we make those good habits stick? That's where Law 2 comes in, make it attractive. This is about tapping into that reward system in our brains.
Oh, it's like catching more flies with honey, right?
Yeah.
We're naturally drawn to things that feel good.
Exactly.
But how do we make healthy eating or going to the gym more appealing?
Clear's got some really interesting techniques for that. One is called temptation bundling. It's pretty clever. He talks about this guy, Ronan Byrne. He wanted to watch Netflix, but he also knew he needed to exercise more.
Did he just watch Netflix while on the treadmill?
Ha. He took it a step further. He hacked his stationary bike to only work if he was pedaling at a certain speed. Then he hooked it up to his TV and his Netflix account, so he could only watch his shows if he was working out.
Wow, so he basically bribed himself with something he enjoyed. I love that idea.
Right.
It makes the whole thing less about forcing yourself and more about being smart, linking something you need to do with something you want to do.
Exactly. And another way to make habits attractive is through social influence. We tend to copy the habits of people we admire, the people in our close circle, even just the majority.
Oh, it's like the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
So if you're trying to build healthy habits,
Yeah.
but your friends are always ordering takeout and skipping the gym, it's going to be harder. It's like you're swimming upstream.
Yeah. And speaking of uphill battles, that brings us to Law 3. Make it easy. This is all about reducing friction. Make good habits easy to do and bad habits hard to do.
So like instead of a giant tub of ice cream in the freezer, just buy a single serving.
Exactly. Out of sight, out of mind. And on the flip side, make those healthy habits as convenient as possible, like pack your gym bag the night before. Or keep your running shoes by the door.
That reminds me of the 2-minute rule we talked about earlier, to beat procrastination.
Yeah.
But it also applies to making new habits easier to start.
Absolutely. Instead of a full hour workout, commit to just 2 minutes. You might end up doing more. But even if you don't, you've still reinforced the habit.
So you're tricking your brain a little bit,
Yeah.
making it think, oh, this isn't so bad. I can handle 2 minutes.
Right.
And then before you know it, you've been at it for 20 minutes.
This principle works for all kinds of habits. Claire gives the example of Japanese electronics manufacturers in the 1970s. They were obsessed with getting rid of waste and making everything super efficient so it was easier for workers to do their jobs well, and it led to huge improvements in quality and productivity.
Wow. So even in really complex situations, simplifying things can have a big impact.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've made it obvious, we've made it attractive, we've made it easy. What's the last piece?
Law 4. Make it satisfying. It's all about that feeling of reward that makes you want to repeat something. Remember we talked about how our brains love instant gratification?
Yeah.
This is where that comes in.
But so many good habits take time to show results. You don't see the benefits of healthy eating or exercise right away.
Right, so we have to get a little creative. Clear says find ways to reward yourself immediately, even if it's something small, like just checking a box on a habit tracker. That little dopamine hit can reinforce the behavior.
I love habit trackers. I'm a very visual person.
Me too.
Seeing that I've stuck to a habit for a few days in a row is so motivating. Like I don't want to break the chain.
It's a visual reminder of your progress. And it's not just for personal goals. Clear talks about this stockbroker, Trent Darsmid. He used paper clips to track his sales calls. He'd start with 120 paper clips in one jar and move one to another jar after each call. His goal was to empty that first jar every day.
That's so simple, but so smart.
Yeah.
He could see his progress with each paperclip, like a little reward system.
It is.
So it's about finding those small wins that keep you going.
Yeah.
Think about a habit you're trying to build. What's a small way to make it more satisfying? Maybe listening to your favorite podcast while you work out. Or taking a relaxing bath after a long day of sticking to your goals.
Those are great ideas.
We've covered the 4 laws. But what about natural talent? Does Clear think some people are just born with better habits?
That's a good question. He actually addresses that directly in the book. He says our genes do play a role in our predispositions. He uses the example of Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer. Phelps has a body type that's naturally good for swimming.
So if I don't have Michael Phelps's body, should I just give up on swimming?
Not at all. What's interesting is that Clear doesn't say talent replaces hard work. It actually makes it clearer. Our genes might give us a head start in certain areas, but it's our habits, our consistent effort that determine how far we go. It's about playing a game that favors your strengths. If you're naturally drawn to something, building habits in that area will be easier and more enjoyable.
So it's not about comparing yourself to others or feeling limited by your genes. It's about understanding your own strengths and building systems to maximize your potential.
Exactly.
And that leads us to another concept, the Goldilocks rule.
Yes, the Goldilocks rule. It's all about finding the sweet spot. We're most motivated when we're working on things that are right on the edge of our abilities.
So not too easy, not too hard, just challenging enough to keep you interested.
Exactly.
It makes sense. If something's too easy, we get bored. If it's too hard, we get discouraged and quit.
Clear uses the example of Steve Martin, the comedian. He spent years working on his craft, starting with simple magic tricks and working up to stand-up. He bombed on stage so many times, but he kept practicing and improving because he was challenging himself just enough to keep growing.
And that's the key, right? Embracing the challenge, pushing yourself. That's where you grow.
Exactly. And as we get better, we have to keep raising the bar. The book says the biggest threat to success isn't failure, it's boredom. It's not about setting one goal and stopping. It's about constantly getting better.
I think a lot of people get stuck in that trap. They achieve some success and then just coast.
It's easy to do.
But to really master something, you have to keep pushing, even when it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the importance of reflection. Clear says we need to regularly look at our habits and make changes if we need to.
It's like taking inventory, right? You need to know what's working, what's not working, and what to change.
He suggests having a system for reviewing your progress. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just take a few minutes each week to think about your habits. Or do a bigger review at the end of each month or year.
Clear gives examples of how top performers do this. Eliud Kipchoge, the marathon runner, takes notes after every practice, analyzing his performance and looking for ways to improve.
And Katie Ledecky, the swimmer, tracks everything. Her food, her sleep, even the times of other swimmers. Then she reviews it all with her coach to see where she can get better.
It's amazing how these athletes are always trying to improve, even when they're already the best.
It shows that growth never stops.
It's not just about performance, though. Clear also talks about reflecting on your values. He recommends an integrity report, where you ask yourself if your actions match your values and the kind of person you want to be.
It's like checking in with yourself. Am I living according to my principles?
Exactly.
Are my habits supporting my goals?
That kind of self-reflection can be really powerful. Now, here's something I didn't expect. Clear talks about how good habits can actually have a downside.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He says, as we get good at something, it becomes automatic. And we might stop paying attention to the details.
We can get complacent.
Right.
So how do we avoid that?
How do we stay focused and keep getting better even when things are easy?
Clear suggests finding a balance between those automatic habits and deliberate practice. Remember that system for reflection and review we talked about. It's important.
So it's not just about doing things mindlessly. It's about thinking about what we're doing and looking for ways to improve.
Exactly.
So it's being intentional with our habits and using them to keep growing.
And this brings us back to identity. Clear says it's important to keep our identity small.
Wait, I thought we were supposed to build an identity around our habits.
We are, but we don't want to be too rigid.
Right.
If our identity is completely tied to one role or outcome, we become fragile.
So instead of I'm an athlete, it's better to say I'm the kind of person who likes challenges and is mentally tough.
Exactly. That way, even if you have a setback or things change, your sense of self isn't completely dependent on that one thing.
It's about having an identity that can adapt.
Right.
Okay, we've covered so much.
Yeah.
Systems, identity, the 4 laws, the Goldilocks rule, reflection. Atomic Habits is full of great ideas. Before we wrap up, what stood out to you the most?
You know what's really fascinating to me? It's how Cleary talks about emotion and logic in building habits. We often think about willpower and discipline, but he shows how important emotions are.
He talks about craving coming before response.
Right.
It's just that desire that makes us act.
And then the satisfaction we feel afterward reinforces the
He
behavior.
does that formula: cue, craving, response, reward.
Yeah, the cue triggers the craving, which leads to the response, and then the reward makes you want to do it again.
It's a reminder that we're not robots.
Right.
Our emotions are a big part of why we do what we do.
Understanding that can help us build better habits.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out what makes us tick, what motivates us, and then using that to design habits that work for us, not against us.
So it's not about forcing yourself to do things you hate.
Right.
It's about finding ways to make the process enjoyable.
Exactly.
It's like we're playing the long game with ourselves, knowing that all those tiny improvements will add up over time to get big results.
And that's the beauty of Atomic Habits. It's not a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a way to understand how habits work, so you can design a life that matches your values and goals.
It's kind of empowering when you think about it. We can shape our own lives, one small habit at a time.
We really can.
We don't have to be stuck. We can create the future we want.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a quote from the book. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations.
So true. It's not about waiting for some magical moment. It's about showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. Making small changes. That over time can have a huge impact.
Exactly. And that's what I hope listeners take away from this deep dive. Atomic Habits doesn't have all the answers, but it does give you a roadmap for making real changes in your life. It's about understanding the science of habits and then using that knowledge to achieve your own goals.
So as we wrap up, I'd love for everyone listening to think about one small habit they can start right now. It could be something as simple as drinking a glass of water when you wake up,
Yeah.
or taking a quick walk after lunch. Remember, those tiny actions done consistently can really change your life.
They can.
What will your first step be?
We've only scratched the surface of Atomic Habits, but hopefully this deep dive has given you some good ideas to get started.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Atomic Habits. We hope you enjoyed it and got some inspiration. Until next time, remember that small changes can make a big difference. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep building those atomic habits. That's how you shape your future.